For the best experience, turn your screen now.
Hi guys, welcome to another Universal RideSafe episode, and today we'll be talking about introductions to the controls of the machine. So this lesson is designed for learner riders, so people who've been sort of learning motorcycling, or people who've been riding 125 machines and want to know a little bit more about the controls of their bikes. So basically what we're talking about here is, the actual controls of the machine. So normally I divide it into two fields. So we have the major controls and the minor controls of the bike. So the major controls for me is what actually physically control the bike, such as the brakes and the throttle. And then the minor controls is the controls which don't have a physical impact on the machine, but they are also very important, such as the indicator and the high beam, low beam, etc. Okay. So regarding major controls, let's start with the throttle, because the throttle obviously is what generates forward momentum. So what generates the energy that we need. So obviously one of the main differences between a bicycle and a motorcycle is that obviously on a motorcycle, because of the combustion engine, we have a throttle. So we have an accelerator here, which is spring loaded, okay? So meaning that it goes back to what we call the point zero once it's off. Okay, so the way we normally grab the throttle, it has to be with when I have my wrist flat like this, so that I can grab the throttle and I have basically 160, 100 something degrees to accelerate and just over 100 and something degrees to decelerate. Yeah, so I can accelerate or I can decelerate the machine. So I shouldn't grab the throttle like this, for example, because then obviously in terms of the angle, I won't have a very good angle to decelerate later on. So I should grab the throttle with my wrist flat like this, and so that I can accelerate and then decelerate, okay? So that's the throttle. That obviously the throttle is very sensitive in most machines. So obviously one of your job will be to get used to the sensitivity of the throttle, which obviously is done through tact. So obviously it's a human sense and I can feel that, and obviously I need to sort of feel how I roll the throttle on and then how I roll the throttle off, yeah? And obviously it will be different from bike to bike, so in terms of the sensitivity here. So that's the throttle there. Secondly, we have the brakes. On this machine here, we have the front brake lever on the right-hand side. So obviously I need to press with the tips of my fingers. So feeling, again, is about tact, isn't it? So I press it in and I feel that, the pressure there, and then I can release the front brake again. And then on this bike, I have the back brake as a pedal in there. So the back brake here, back brake on, back brake off, and obviously I need the tact as well when it comes to my toes in there, in terms of feeling the pressure I'm exerting on the pedal for the back brake. So I've got the rear brake, I've got the front brake, and then I have the throttle. The last major control on a manual bike will be the clutch. So I have the clutch lever here, and obviously that's what activates and deactivates the clutch. So I press it in and then I release the clutch. And actually lastly, we also have the gear selector on a manual bike as a major control. So we have gear selector there. So the way it normally works is first gear is down, and then I've got the neutral between the first and the second gear here. And then I have second, third, fourth, and fifth gear all the way up, okay? On this specific machine here, if you look at the panel here as well, if you look at the panel of the bike, what we have here, we are blessed to have an actual display of the gear itself. So it says gear in there. Right now it's empty because we are in neutral gear. But if I put myself in first gear, for example, then gear 1 appears on the display there. So I know exactly what gear I am at any given time, which could be very useful, especially if you're a beginner or just you're coming back to riding now, okay? So that's the major controls. So again, major controls for me is what physically controls the machine. And now we're going to be talking about minor controls. So let's start from left to right, so it should be more consistent. We have the horn here, and obviously the purpose of the horn is to alert other road users of your presence in there. And then we have the indicator switch in here, and if I switch the bike on, then I can see whether, and all I have to do is basically move this button here, this switch to the left, so that my left signal comes on, like that. And then to cancel the signal on this specific machine, all I have to do is press that switch, that button in. So I press it in, and then the signal, it's now cancelled. And the same to the right here, then to cancel the signal, I press it in. Now, the other minor control I have here is obviously for the low beam and the high beam switch. This bike, as standard, comes with the headlights on. As soon as I start the bike, the headlight is there, so there's no headlight switch or anything. But what I can do is switch from low beam. So obviously low beam is illuminating the tarmac only, and the high beam illuminates a little bit further up. Yeah, so high beam, and then I've got the high beam lights in here, and then low beam in there, okay? So that's that. And then basically, in terms of moving towards the middle now, we have the panel here. So this particular bike has a particular panel. So we have the rotations per minute there in terms of the engine rotations in there, so the RPM. And then we have here a digital display where it will display features such as the fuel gauge, so E for empty, F full. It will display features such as the odometer, so in terms of the mileage counter, how many miles this bike has done. We also have here, obviously, how many miles, the speedometer. Because the bike is stationary, so it says 0 miles per hour there. We have lights such as the neutral lights, and obviously the high beam. If I start the bike here, for example, we have the high beam lights in there, and we have the indicator lights. And obviously, if I have an engine problem, I may have an engine light, which is orange, right in there. Okay, so it's a very basic panel here. On the right-hand side, what we have is a start button, because this is an electric start bike. And then in the middle here, again, going back, we have the ignition for the bike. So obviously to turn this bike on, what I'm gonna do is switch the ignition on. So the electrical system comes live. It does sort of an electrical check on it. If there's no problems, then that engine light goes off. And what I'm gonna do, I'm going to hit the start button there in order to start the bike, okay? To switch off the bike, all I have to do is switch to the left-hand side there, and the bike is off, okay? So in terms of controls, so we've just covered the major controls, so what physically controls the bikes, and then the minor controls, features such as lights and panels and that sort of thing, okay? So that's the control lesson for you. Obviously, it will vary from bike to bike. Some bikes will have more features than others. Some bikes will have engine cuts-off switches, for example. We have flash lights and stuff like that. But obviously, I've just covered the basics on this specific machine in terms of the introduction to the basic controls of this machine. Okay, thank you for watching.